A 22-year-old sailor was collecting officers' laundry when the first Japanese planes came over Pearl Harbor. The Navy had placed him in a service branch that was not meant to fight. Within minutes, his assigned battle station was wrecked. His battleship was taking torpedoes, and men were bleeding on the deck. Dorie Miller began carrying the wounded. Then he was sent to help his dying captain. A .50 caliber machine gun stood nearby, and the young sailor had never been formally trained to fire it. Miller took the grips anyway. He fired until the ammunition was gone and the burning bridge had to be abandoned. The action made him one of the first American heroes of World War II. Yet when the Navy first praised the black sailor who had fought back, it did not tell the public his name. Sunday morning, aboard the battleship West Virginia had begun with routine work. Miller had risen around 6 and was making his laundry rounds while the ship lay moored beside Tennessee on Battleship Row. Then aircraft appeared over the harbor shortly before 8. The first explosions did not sound like practice. Torpedoes struck the port side, bombs came through the upper decks, and the ship began to list as water-flooded spaces below. Smoke cut across the harbor while sailors ran toward stations they had rehearsed reaching. Some found their routes blocked. Others arrived to discover that the place where they were supposed to fight no longer existed. Miller's battle assignment was at an anti-aircraft ammunition magazine amidships. When he reached it, torpedo damage had made it useless. He could not do the job printed beside his name. Miller went upward instead of waiting below. On deck, men were being burned, cut by fragments, or thrown against steel by the force of the attack. Officers quickly noticed the strength that had made him the West Virginia's heavyweight boxing champion. They put that strength to work moving wounded sailors away from fire and exposed positions. This was not a clean rescue line. The ship was leaning. Oil and water made decks treacherous, and smoke reduced familiar passages to dark, choking corridors. Later, the official action report credited Miller and Lieutenant Frederick White with hauling people through oil and water toward the quarterdeck, unquestionably saving men who might otherwise have died. Before Miller ever touched a weapon, he had already entered the battle by lifting bodies that could not move without him. The worst injury on the bridge belonged to Captain Mervyn Bennion. A heavy fragment had torn into his abdomen while he was commanding the defense of the ship. He remained conscious and kept asking about fires, pumps, and the condition of his crew. Lieutenant Commander Dior Johnson brought Miller toward the bridge because Miller might be strong enough to carry the captain below. There was no proper stretcher route from that height. Men tried a cot, then an 8-foot wooden ladder. The ship's list, the narrow ladders, the heat, and Bennion's terrible wound made every movement painful. They shifted him to what shelter they could find near the conning tower. Bennion did not survive, but Miller stayed with the men trying to protect him while flames spread toward the bridge. The attempt to move the captain placed Miller beside the forward anti-aircraft guns. Lieutenant White later reported that he and Miller manned 2 machine guns near the conning tower. Miller knew the basic shape of the work because he had watched trained sailors use the weapons. Watching was not the same as receiving instruction, and the Navy had not prepared a mess attendant for this position. Yet the controls were in front of him, aircraft were still attacking, and ammunition was available. Miller took one of the guns. His choice did not require a speech or an order announcing a new role. The role changed because the ship needed another pair of hands. In that moment, the line between the Navy's official assignment and the work required to keep men alive disappeared. Miller later described the machine gun in plain terms. He had seen how others handled it, so he pulled the trigger and kept it working. He estimated that he fired for about 15 minutes. Japanese aircraft came close, but anti-aircraft fire came from many ships and shore positions. Miller believed he may have hit one. The surviving evidence cannot assign him a confirmed total, and later claims of several kills go beyond it. His courage does not depend on a number. The verified act is strong enough. A sailor stayed at an exposed gun on a burning battleship until ammunition ran out and he was ordered to leave the bridge. Below and around him, West Virginia was being fought, flooded, and abandoned at the same time. Counter-flooding kept the ship from rolling over, but she settled into the shallow harbor. Fire moved through the superstructure. Men improvised lines from cranes to escape areas cut off by flame. Miller helped move Captain Bennion again when the improvised stretcher shifted, then continued with the others toward a safer route. The gun was only one part of his morning. He carried, fired, pulled, and climbed as the situation changed. That is why the official citation later joined the two actions. It praised him for helping move his mortally wounded captain, and for operating a machine gun under bombing, strafing, and serious fire, until ordered away. When the immediate attack ended, the harbor did not become quiet. Crews fought fires, searched compartments, counted the missing, and tried to understand how a peaceful Sunday had become a national disaster. West Virginia had lost 130 men, with more wounded. The ship appeared broken on the bottom, but much of her crew had continued working after the outcome seemed settled. In that first official account, Miller was not presented as a lone hero who saved the battleship. He was one name among officers and enlisted men whose actions kept others alive under conditions described as beyond human capacity. That setting matters. His decision was exceptional, but it belonged to a crew struggling together while their captain lay dying and their ship filled with water. The written record knew Miller's name before most Americans did. Officer statements identified him and described his work on the bridge, at the guns, and among the wounded. Public announcements moved differently. On January 1, 1942, the Navy released a list of Pearl Harbor commendations that included an unnamed Negro. The phrase turned a specific young man back into a category. It acknowledged courage while withholding the identity that made courage part of a human life. Black organizations and newspapers wanted to know who he was. The question became larger than one medal. If a segregated Navy could use a black sailor's strength during the attack, could it also say his name afterward and admit what his action revealed about the limits it had placed on men like him? Miller had grown up near Waco, Texas, in a farming family. He played fullback in high school and worked on his father's farm before joining the Navy in September 1939. He wanted to travel and send money home. The Navy trained him at Norfolk, assigned him first to the ammunition ship Pyro, and transferred him to West Virginia in January 1940. He became known for boxing and for the physical confidence that later made officers reach for him when Captain Bennion had to be moved. None of that childhood or shipboard routine foretold a famous morning. It simply explains why, when the planned chain of command and equipment broke, people near Miller trusted his strength before the wider country knew anything about him. His rating was mess attendant, one of the few Navy paths open to black enlistees at the time. Men in that branch served meals, cared for officers' spaces, and handled work that kept a ship running, but they were blocked from most technical and combat ratings available to white sailors. Pearl Harbor exposed the absurdity of that boundary in the clearest possible way. The attack did not ask which branch Miller belonged to before destroying his station. The wounded did not ask whether his rating allowed him to carry them. If you believe courage like this deserves to be named, subscribe to Frontline Brief, leave a like, and tell us in the comments what matters more to you, the official assignment or the decision made when no one is ready. The name reached the public because people outside the Navy kept looking. Lawrence Reddick, director of the Schomburg collection in Harlem, discovered that the unnamed sailor was Dorie Miller. The Pittsburgh Courier published the identification, and the Associated Press carried it on March 12, 1942. Miller was no longer an anonymous figure used to decorate a list of commendations. He was a 22-year-old Texan with parents, brothers, shipmates, and a photograph. The discovery also sharpened public pressure. The NAACP and other black organizations argued that his action deserved one of the nation's highest honors. Members of Congress introduced resolutions seeking the Medal of Honor. The debate forced the Navy to answer a question it had been able to avoid while the hero remained unnamed. The Navy did not award Miller the Medal of Honor. It first issued a letter of commendation, which satisfied few of the people campaigning for greater recognition. The argument continued in newspapers, organizations, Congress, and the White House. On May 11, President Franklin Roosevelt approved the Navy Cross. At that time, it was among the Navy's highest decorations, and no African American had received it before Miller. The award did not end segregation, but it forced the official record to attach extraordinary combat courage to a man the Navy had limited to the messman branch. On May 27, 1942, Admiral Chester Nimitz pinned the Navy Cross on Miller aboard the aircraft carrier Enterprise at Pearl Harbor. The damaged West Virginia was visible in the background as salvage work continued. The location joined the public honor to the ship where the action had occurred. Photographs show Miller standing in his white uniform, face controlled, while the medal rests against his chest. Nimitz said he expected other men of Miller's race to receive similar honor in the future. The sentence recognized a beginning, but it also revealed how unusual the event remained. It was not proof of equal opportunity. Miller's image traveled farther than Miller did. He spoke at training stations, appeared during a short war bond tour, and became the subject of a government poster. The same country that had first described him without a name now printed his face above a message about duty. For Black Americans fighting the WWII struggle victory over fascism abroad and racism at home, he represented both pride and unfinished work. The poster celebrated a unity the segregated service had not yet created. His fame did not give him a permanent platform or remove him from danger. After the speeches and photographs, the Navy returned him to the ordinary movement of wartime ships. Miller had transferred to the cruiser Indianapolis soon after Pearl Harbor. After the publicity tour, he returned to sea duty and was later assigned to the new escort carrier Liscome Bay. By then his rating had changed to Cook Third Class, but the deeper structure of his service had not been transformed by the medal. Liscome Bay was smaller and slower than a fleet carrier. Her job was to carry aircraft close enough to support landings across the Pacific. In November 1943, she joined the operation around Makin Atoll in the Gilbert Islands. Miller was 24. Less than 2 years had passed since the morning when his own battle station vanished, and he found another place to fight. Before dawn on November 24, Liscome Bay moved with other ships near Makin. The carrier held fueled aircraft, ammunition, and bombs for the missions ashore. A Japanese submarine, I-175, reached a firing position and launched torpedoes. One struck the starboard side near the after-bomb magazine. The first impact was followed by a massive internal detonation. Aircraft bombs stored inside the ship exploded together, opening the hull and throwing flame and wreckage across the formation. There was no long damage control battle like the one Miller had survived on West Virginia. Liscome Bay became an inferno and went down in minutes. Nearby crews saw men in the water, burning debris, and a ship that had almost ceased to exist before rescue could begin. Only 272 sailors and Marines survived. More than 600 died. Miller was not among those recovered. No reliable account describes his final action, and the story must stop where the evidence stops. He may have been below, on duty, resting, or moving toward a station when the torpedo struck. Giving him a cinematic last stand would only replace the real man with an invention. His parents received notice in December that he was missing. For a year, missing was the official word. Then, under wartime law, the Navy recorded his death after 12 months without news. Pearl Harbor had made his face known across the country. The Pacific still took him without leaving a final photograph, a body, or a last sentence. The Pittsburgh Courier marked the loss with grief and anger. Miller had died as a cook, despite the courage that made him famous. His sacrifice had not ended segregation in the Navy. That judgment did not diminish his service. It measured the distance between the symbol the country celebrated and the opportunities the service still denied. Change came slowly through pressure, wartime need, and the work of many people whose names were never printed on posters. Miller's story belongs inside that larger struggle, but it remains personal. A young man joined to travel and help his family. He survived one sinking battleship by carrying other men. He returned to sea after the country called him a hero. The second ship did not give him time to escape. The most important fact about Dorie Miller is not how many aircraft he may have hit. It is that, when the plan disappeared, he kept choosing the next necessary action. He carried the wounded. He tried to move his captain. He took a gun the Navy had not trained him to use. Later, other people fought to move his name from a private report into the public record. The medal came after the choice, the poster came after the name, the legacy came after his death. On the morning of Pearl Harbor, none of those things existed. There was only a burning ship, a weapon, and a sailor deciding whether an official boundary mattered more than the men beside him. Miller answered with his hands, and history was forced to catch up.